I foraged earlier today. And what I did, a lot of times what I do with wildflowers is condition them just a little bit differently. So we want to make sure that we're not kind of putting them through too much abuse. They're a little bit more delicate than some of your, wholesale imported flowers. So I let these sit in water for a couple of hours in a shady, cool spot outside. And then I didn't even recut them. So now I'm going to process them just a little bit. And as you can see, there's some kind of less than lovely leaves on here. All right, so I'm going to remove anything. I mean, I'm okay with some spots and things like that because it is a wildflower, okay? But I just want to make sure that it looks clean, that everything's firm and healthy. So I'll remove anything that's not looking quite right, okay? But not too much. This is an arrangement that we're actually not going to edit our flowers too much. Now, it will be important to remove any lower offshoots like you see here, okay? One of the challenges of working with tall stems is that sometimes it can be hard for the water to travel to each offshoot and each flower. So if there are any offshoots kind of lower down, be sure to remove those for that reason. We could even remove this, okay? But I'm recutting the stem at a diagonal angle and then placing it in a fresh bucket of water. And then I will set these small ones aside for some other work later on. But for now, it's mostly just about removing the lower offshoots. Okay, obviously we don't want any offshoots in water. And then just cleaning up our stems a little bit. Okay. Now, with wildflowers like this, you can also dunk their stems in boiling water, and you can experiment with which wildflowers in your area take well to that. I'm not doing that today because the mallow is actually very fresh. The temperatures were cool enough, and this particular mallow, most of it was actually growing in kind of a shady area. So the leaves are firm and it's quite well hydrated. So the thing about wildflowers is that we don't want to put them through too much shock initially. We don't want them to be sitting in the heat, and we don't want to overhandle them, okay? So again, you see like this yellow leaf here. I'm just going to remove that. And then some lower offshoots. Just a really simple clean. I have to admit, with this arrangement, I'm not going to veer too far from what I found myself in the flower meadow. I just love the abundance of mallow this time of year. And so I want to capture that in a vase inside my home. So I love how some of these are almost like shrubs. And but you see there are just a few leaves that they're just a little too, again, I don't mind spotted leaves and things looking natural, but we do want it to look cleaned up just ever so slightly. So you see I have, oops. Okay, right here, if you can see, these are nodes in our stems, okay? So we always want to take those in mind when we're clipping. These can block the traveling of water if you don't cut in the right place. So we want to cut between the nodes, okay? All right, there we go. So next I have some very tall oak grass. And some are fresh, some are dried. I'm just going to remove some of the offshoot grasses from the bottom of the stems, and then I will set these aside. Now I want you to be careful when foraging for umbel shaped flowers. Those are the ones you see that are kind of shaped like an umbrella. There are some that are quite poisonous, including hemlock, okay? This one I have gotten to know over the last 3 years. It came from a meadow near my house. So I'm very familiar with what is growing in that meadow, and I have confirmed the identification several times. So right now I'm just removing the brown leaves from the stems. So these will hopefully offer a nice large scale in our arrangement and a nice little pop of chartreuse texture, okay? You could also, to be extra careful, you could just leave this in the bucket while you remove everything so that you don't damage any of the stems. So it is still fresh, but it's kind of in the process of drying, and some of the leaves have already dried. But I actually like the look of just the fresh chartreuse seeds. So I think that's really nice, and it's super large scale, but it does require that we edit things down and we remove these sort of dried bits, dried leaves, and there's some other little pods that are dried. So we've had kind of a crazy extremes in weather lately, where it's been, we had a full day of rain yesterday, but before that we were already reaching 80-degree temperatures. So keep in mind that you will have much different spring ingredients than I do. I live in a climate that is very similar to like the Bay Area in California, okay? So you may live further south, you may have tropicals, you may be in the north, so you may want to explore things like pear blossom and apple blossom, peach blossoms, depending on where you are. Might be even be too early for those. Hawthorn, spirea, abellia, those are all gorgeous stems for tall arrangements. And we're going very simple here. So for my large arrangements, I like a lot of repetition, and I like to keep it maybe just 2 to 3 ingredients. And I actually do not really care to use focal flowers in large arrangements. So I like to keep it looking more just like fillers. Think about like when you see a tree. Usually, and as I remove these offshoots, see, this is going to give me just a little bit more control in my final arrangement. But when I make a tall arrangement, I like to think about the way that a tree looks. You don't see big focal flowers on trees, and if you do, you see a lot of them all together, typically, not always. But think about like looking up at the trees, okay? It's usually a lot of small blossoms. Their scale looks small in comparison to the trunk of the tree. So that's kind of the effect we're going for, is just tall branches with small flowers or small leaves. So the vase I'm working with today is just a very simple terracotta pitcher, okay? What I really like is that it actually is got the glossy finish inside, and then it has some beautiful, I don't know if you can see, let me take it a little closer, but it's got some beautiful drips on the vase. So although the vase is very simple, it has that handmade touch and a little bit of texture. So as you know, I love placing something here low at the rim of the vase. I'm going to catch a few more of these dried bits that I missed. Okay. And with the Alexanders, oops, got a little bit of a tangle there. I'm going to start creating a little bit of stability. You want to be really careful with tall arrangements that you're not overloading a small vase, okay? We don't want anything tipping over. So something good to do, take your stem, place it next to the vase to see where your height is going to be, okay? And with the Alexanders, I actually want them just a little lower down. So I'm gonna go right above that node. Okay. And what's really nice about this is that now I almost have a little grid going in the vase. Let me see if I can show you that. Okay, so now I have my mallow, and I'm going to start filling in the spaces. I am going to leave this Alexander aside because maybe I'll want to add it later with the grasses. Okay. So I want to start with one of the taller mallow branches, okay? Because I want to finish sort of creating my shape. Cutting just another quick clean cut and just intertwining the stems here. Okay, I'm going to take a step back and look at it. So I love how we're creating kind of some layers in here. Now I'm taking another one of the larger stemmed mallows, okay? So we're always working with kind of the thickest, largest, fattest stems first, okay? And then we're coming in with the more delicate pieces. And typically I work a lot faster than this, but when I'm doing a large arrangement, I do want to study the placement just a little more closely. So I love how we have these taller heights in here. But I want something low down to the rim of the vase. Okay. So we're going to place her down here, right? And then I'm going to just fill in with the last 3 branches. And there may be a hero side, okay? As you know, there's usually a hero side. There's a side we like the best, right? But just for balance sakes and cohesiveness, I still want it to look good from all sides, okay? So I still want more closer to the rim of the vase. In fact, I may take some of my shorter pieces that I had because they're easier to work with and place some right down here at the rim. And then I'll take some of my Alexanders and separate them out. Okay, so I'm removing the offshoots and placing some down here at the rim. And these will dry, okay, but I'm getting those really close to the rim of the vase, just so that we have a little more going on there. And in fact, I'm going to place her right in here, so we have something almost cascading over the edge a little bit. And you see how we get this just really nice, blousy natural feel for a large arrangement. Nothing feels too contrived here. So I felt this was just a little dense in here. I want a little more space. So I removed one of the offshoots and I'm adding her here so we can kind of accentuate this vining off area. And I may see what that looks like. So there's a little push and pull here. I posted recently on our school Instagram another creative process from a collage artist, you know, and she was talking about that before she glues anything, she just kind of plays a little bit. It's not a linear process, right? So we may put a branch in and take a branch out. That doesn't mean you're a bad floral designer. It means you're playing, and the ability to play and explore and be curious and change instead of saying it should be this way or I always do it that way. The ability to change that and to be ever curious is what makes you a good designer. Now I'm going to come into that area that I kind of loosened up a little bit and add in some of our grasses. This is the kind of thing where, let's say I was doing an installation at a restaurant, I would not place, I may actually do the whole arrangement right at the location, but I would not place the grasses until the very end, okay? So I wouldn't do that until I brought the arrangement to the location. So I'm still just coming in a bit with some of these shorter pieces that I had saved. Have a bit of density here, and then it kind of flops off to the side. It all feels very, very natural. I have Alice in Wonderland mallow leaves, okay? And what I'm going to do is, let's see if I can find a few more mallow just to fill in here a little bit. This is why it's always good to save your extra scraps and extra things. And I think I'm going to switch my Alexanders just to fill in this space over here a little bit. Okay. And I need to kind of place it in the location to see which angle I want it, but see how it feels just like a blousy meadow. We have a lot of movement, a lot of just poof, but also a lot of density. And choosing a vase that has an elegant line that comes in at the center is going to help you make an elegant composition like this. And the other thing to think about is making sure that you have an interesting scale. So if we're counting from here, we've got about 4.5 times the vase. My grass is going off of my frame, okay? So we have a very tall proportion. If I were to add any more, I think it's going to get top heavy for the vase, both physically and visually. So I like where it is right now. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you soon. Bye.